Before we begin today, I want to ground this episode in something that matters deeply to me, why I do this work, and who I trust enough to stand beside me while I do it. I'm grateful to have the support of my colleague and law enforcement partner, Aaron Hawkins, of Clackamas County, Oregon. Aaron has spent nearly 2 decades serving his community with a focus on protecting victims, supporting survivors, and approaching investigations with integrity, fairness, and compassion. His work in domestic violence advocacy reflects something I believe at the core of this show, that human life is precious and that truth deserves patience, rigor, and care. This episode marks a first for me. For the first time ever in history, I will walk through the commission of the crime using my methodology, which I have never done before, of the Fager family murders in 1987, step by step. And I just want you guys to know, I think you can hear it in my voice, and I want to be very clear. This was not done for shock and not for dramatization. It was done because there are moments in investigative work where understanding how a crime unfolded is essential to understanding what still remains unanswered. This process was uncomfortable. It was emotionally demanding, and it required me to slow down, sit with the facts, and allow the weight of them to be felt, not just intellectually, but humanly. I'm letting you into this process because where we're going next requires context, requires you to understand that nothing we do here is casual. What you're about to hear may challenge you. It challenged me. But once you see the patterns emerging, once you understand why this happened, once you understand why this matters, you'll understand why this work cannot stop here. Let's begin. I'm seeing that there was a car used in the commission of the crime. It was not the red camper truck, but it was one of Vines's other vehicles. He drove it to Wichita. Dennis had already been going into the house during the summertime because I think one of the first times I saw him, it definitely was very green back there. I'm being told that he went in 9 different times into the home. 9 times. It's very important. I don't know if this is typical of Rader. I don't know as much about the details about what he has told the cops about how often and how frequent during the trolling and stalking phases he was entering these homes, but he figured out a really easy way to get in because of the family's schedule. Now to just focus on the commission of the crime. Vines dropped Rader off. He dropped him off. Well, they were already watching. They knew when to come around the block because they saw the contractor's van leave, and then they knew that they were going to frame him. So they didn't really care if he came back and they killed him because they would have just took him and made him hang himself somewhere else, because that's what they like to do. And it was something that they had wanted to do again. I guess they had done this. There's more that I don't know about that were in Wichita, that they made it look like a suicide on one of them, a young man, and somebody else. And that the cops know about that guy, but he was just acting like it. He didn't, they're like, oh, he didn't kill this guy. Young man. I see his face. He looks young, but I'm not going to talk about him right now. So they came around the corner. Literally Rader was dropped off right there. Boom. And then Vines took the car and he went over near the McDonald's area, but he was a couple blocks down that area. And I'll show you where, if you guys look on the screen. I'm just going to do that later. So I'm going to relax and I'm going to just do my thing. I'm nervous to do this for you guys because I've never done this on a world stage, but whatever, let's ride. So they come around, he immediately drops Rader in the front. So Rader's easily able just to move very fast. Rader comes up to the door. He entered through the garage and he went onto the patio, I believe. I see him doing something right there with that. There was a way that he could he was very careful not to leave the footprints. I see him, he's coming through the door near the garage because it was open. He comes around the side. He actually closes the garage or something. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. That's what I'm seeing. So he's closing the garage and then he turns around and goes to the front door and knocks. And Kelly answers. And she had something in her hands. Looks like she was sitting there. She was reading something and she had a few things she was doing. And he tells her he has a construction hat on. He tells her that he works with Bill. And so she's like, oh, okay. And then she's like, well, he comes around or does something. She's talking about something. He comes in and then he brandishes the weapon, the gun that he chose to use to kill Philip when he came home. And he didn't use tape to bind her. I don't know why, but he used some nylon instead. It looks like nylon to me. I would say it was stockings that he took. I'm seeing him do it from Mary Fager. So he took it from Mary Fager. It was something maybe that she never would have noticed was gone. And she says that they put her on the sofa on her back and they did a lot of posing because at one point during the time she's being moved to the couch, this was probably a half an hour into it. Okay, so he was closer to the house. He wasn't further away, like blockwise. He was like halfway in between the McDonald's. So Vines basically does his thing to conceal himself, but he's literally right there, like a couple blocks away, because no one was going to know. And he'd already known where he was going to park. They practiced it. They practiced it quite a few times because whoever made this order was very specific, and Charlie is the one who took the orders. So then you have... So Charles comes, he does a specific knock, Rader immediately lets him in, he's there. Charles goes into the kitchen and he grabs his favorite knife that he can find, and he already knew which one he wanted to use because Rader had taken a couple pictures for him to like get him excited for the main event, as they call it. So they go and, he goes in there and during this process, and she says that they really enjoyed what they were doing. And at the time when Rader got there, he tied her up and he went right for Sherry. He said they were super fixated on Sherry, obviously, like we know that, but this was about taking Kelly downstairs so she could hear in the bedroom that they took her in, and they tied her up and put her in there. And then they wanted to unbind her so that it wouldn't look like Dennis, it would look like a copycat, which, like, because they were laughing about it. They're like, we can't wait to get Bill for this. So yeah, they definitely know who he was, is what I'm being told through this process. I'm being shown. He brandishes the knife, and when he takes Kelly downstairs, he puts the knife right by the telephone, and he says, if you touch this fucking telephone, okay, if you try to touch this telephone, and they, oh, okay, they left it connected because they couldn't cut the cables like he normally wanted to. They're saying, yeah, like they knew, they'd planned all this, they knew. So they said, since we couldn't cut the cable to the house like we like to usually, what we decided to do is we're just going to leave this knife right here. And then they said a bunch of terrible stuff to her, and they're like, you're going to listen to your sister die. And by then, Sherry, she's already like, that's why like at different stages, she was undressed. He cut her clothes off. I'm pretty sure, yeah, I'm seeing clothes cut off. And then they definitely took some of that, but okay. And then they used some of the stuff from the clothing. Okay, that makes sense. And then okay. And so they lay the knife by the phone, and they could have unplugged it, and they probably did something at one point. I don't know. I see them kind of like doing some staging, but I'm just really trying to stay focused on what I'm seeing. So they take her into the back room. They tie her up. She's back there, and Vines is like holding her back there. And he, at one point, is doing whatever he likes to do. So Rader goes and, like, lets Vines have his time because he doesn't want to he likes to be alone when he's having his fantasy. He doesn't want them there. But he doesn't care if, like, the guy comes down or, like, sometimes they're in and out. It's whatever. But they wanted each girl isolated in a room, and that was their idea of a good time. So I'm seeing her. She's in the back room with Vines while these things are happening with Sherry. I'm trying not to see it. I have a way I can maneuver out of seeing certain things, but then it's just, I have to see it anyway. So so they did a lot of like posing and like dressing and undressing of them and some stuff that like would never ever be able to be proven. But, they were doing the Polaroids. Yeah, they were doing the Polaroids. They didn't have the camera with them. They thought about bringing the other one in the hit kit, and Vines had a bag, but I gotta get to it. They're telling me I'll get to it later. So ultimately what happens at one point, they'd already killed her, Sherry. They put her in the hot tub in front of her sister, and they were in the back bedroom. They were definitely filming at this point. Yeah, there they are. Okay. Yeah, they filmed everything. It's a bulky camera. It looks exactly like one of the ones that I was looking at. It's black. It has some red on it. I think it's JVC is what I'm saying. I'm trying to get close to it. I don't want to. I will. Maybe I can go back and look at it in the bag later. Okay. I don't want to say the things that they're saying because I hear them because she's showing me. So I'm being shown that Sherry's already dead. Kelly's just terrified. Philip shows up. They didn't expect it to happen, but they also, because they were like gonna work. Well, they were gonna work everyone in the house. Like they expected maybe he'd come back because they were like, "Where's your mother?" and like everything else, right? Like so because they thought she was gonna be there, and when she wasn't, they were super pissed. Like they were super pissed because they were supposed to be able to film her too. Is what they're saying. Oh my god. So then. she's scared. She's really scared. It's okay. Relax. She's really scared. Oh my god. Oh, no, I don't want to see. Please, no. Vines held a knife to her. Rader's going up. He comes up the straight stair, not the spiral. Comes up right behind him. Boom. Really, here's her dad die. It's only like maybe 30 minutes later that Bill Butterworth is back. Like you could still smell the gunshot. Has to do with the air, and he walked in. But he couldn't smell it because he came downstairs or something. He goes down. Okay, there's a way he was going in and out a lot for the... Okay, he comes in. He goes down, and that's when he finds Sherry. Finds Sherry and he sees, I'm seeing her. I don't know if she's there. I see the videos, but they look like, no, I'm gonna go somewhere else. I'm snapping so I can get myself. It helps my brain. Okay, there we go. This is a method that works really well for me. Typically during this time, I'll put on music, but for the sake of this, I'm not going to. For copyright things, I have certain songs I listen to that really help me, and I'll explain that at another time. So he's down. They're really worried because they had to use the gun. So that's why, okay. So they're down there, like, they're staging because they were, like, really thinking that they weren't going to have to use the gun. I mean, obviously, like, even if he's like, people heard it. But also, okay, makes sense. Yeah. There was a way, like, that they muffled the sound. Okay. That they have, like, a tactic that they know to use. So, but yeah. No, there was somebody close by, like, somebody was, like, delivering. I see somebody out doing a delivery or something. It could be the mail guy. But okay. So then at that point, they're like downstairs freaking out. They're like going through the house. Like it got kind of sloppy. And then Butterworth's back. So they hear the door open. Butterworth comes in. They hear the footsteps. I see his face. Wow. Okay. That's him. Definitely, because I recognize him too. Okay. So Bill's there. Bill walks in. He goes downstairs. He sees, okay, it's not, he's like kind of just like looking to see maybe if they're still down there because he had been there and he saw the condensation and stuff. All that stuff he said was true. I feel fucking terrible for this guy. And they really didn't like him because he really hated pedophiles. And there was a guy that they knew. They were trying to tell me about that. We can get into that later. I'm going to stay focused on the commission of the crime. So he comes in. He sees her in the hot tub. He grabs her and he tries to pull her out. He realizes she's dead. He runs upstairs. The phone is like, at this point, he's not even thinking about the phone. There's a knife by the phone. He's like looking around, but his brain is literally splitting. So it's like, if I try to tap into his experience, it's very interesting. The fugue state part of it. Because there's another external influence going on that they were using. There's another guy down the street now. What? Who is this guy? All right, we'll just leave you alone, motherfucker. And I'm just going to keep going. So then so there was a way they could see that, right, the angle, because they're going to deal with this guy. He's revving an engine right by, okay. So they used to communicate with, like, revving engine. And the guy would park there to, like, warn them. And they had different things they would do. So at one point, somebody's hearing the gunshot. Somebody's revving an engine because Butterworth's coming back, but then they're downstairs so they don't hear it, because they'd already killed Philip. So he's revving in and they hear it. And the guy does a honk. And then, Jesus. So Bill, he's like taking the quickest exit. So he goes, I wonder where those stairs come down into the basement because I've never seen those pictures, but I'm kind of seeing it now. So he's like grabbing the stairs. Like he's like trying to pull himself up. Like he's like, he climbs and then he's like, looks like he's like trying to get out. He's literally like, he's like on his hands. I see his hands on the ground. Then he gets up, he comes up, what I will assume is this. It is. It's not the other stairs. I see Dennis going up those, but not him. So I'm going to assume it's the spiral. And he's literally like crawling out. He gets up and he sees Philip on the ground. He realizes he's dead. And he's just come out from his experience and look at him. Okay, I'm just going to try to like switch my perspective. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm there. So he's on the ground. He's freaking out. Then he hears them downstairs because at this point they've got Kelly with a knife to her throat again. Rader's wondering if he's going to have to kill him. So they're down there and they're like, and then Kelly screams out because she's trying really anything because she doesn't want, you know what I'm saying? She's just trying to get somebody to help her, and she doesn't want someone else to die. It was like a whole mix of emotion she was feeling. At that point, she's naked. They were about to put her in the tub because they had to move quick with her. That's why she was naked and she was not bound. They wanted to do that part, I think, later with the specific tape again or something. Like they really wanted to, which is I think why he drew her specifically, is what she's saying. Yeah, that's why they drew her specifically, is what I'd say. I've been going for 25 minutes though. It's a long time. Okay, so I usually do like different increments. This level of process is always the most intense for me. There's another level that I do not prefer, and it's even worse. So they hear him. He scuttles out of the house. He switches up the keys, and he's outside, and he's flipping out. So he grabs the Volkswagen Rabbit. It's all the way that Butterworth said. So we'll just, he takes off. When they come out, they realize the van's there because they're just going to take the car. And then they're like, well, fuck, here's the van, and they're like, well, it works out, even though it doesn't make fucking sense. Like, why would anyone even believe that he would have drove that back to the McDonald's where Kelly worked? Like, he just drove the van there and like planted his own van there. And they're like staging the van. I see them like doing a whole bunch of shit in the van. And then they're not able to like walk down the street. Okay. Well, yeah. So it's no big deal for them to like walk down the street. Sometimes they can't get away with wearing gloves, like when they walk down the street after they leave certain areas. But typically they were taking their victims to private properties. But this was different, this type of style they like to do in Wichita. And they've done this kind of thing in other areas like Oklahoma City and things like that, is what I'm being told. So ultimately, stay focused on the commission. Okay. So they get out there and they take the van and they go like a few blocks down. And then they're like getting ready to they're like cleaning the van, like hella. Like they're just really paranoid because they didn't plan on doing the van, but then they were kind of excited about it too because they thought it was like funny, because by the time they're in the van, they're just like laughing their asses off. And then there's another guy who shows up and they're like, he can't be seen with the van. But then Rader gets in the car and Vines drives it because no one's going to recognize Vines in that town. Well, So then, but yeah, they had to put Kelly in there fast. Like she was strangled and then put in there. They would have loved to have done the same kind of thing, but it just didn't work out. This was not their favorite show, as they said. Fucking losers. God, what a bunch of clowns. Okay, I'm okay. And they left the noose there, the one they brought for Mary, just to frame him with it. They're saying, yeah, we actually brought that for him. Really? What the fuck? It's saying I'm being shown that I thought that they brought the fourth noose for Mary, but she wasn't there. And so then they were like saying that they left it in the van as like a symbol of like that they wish they could have hung Butterworth. My God, oh, Lord. Oh God. Yeah, he's parked by that street by the park, the other guy at the point, and he wasn't gonna honk because he didn't see any cops coming, nothing. So at one point they're feeling a little bit better, but then they take their time doing some stuff and then they're out of there. I mean, they were pretty fast with it. They definitely know what they're doing. Like when they're not like just having their free their free time, as they call it, free range, and some other really sick words that I'm not going to repeat because I am not putting any unnecessary detail on here regarding the murders of these people. This is something that is so important to my heart that I don't hurt these families any more than they've already been hurt. But I hope that they'll forgive me if they are, because this is ultimately what is necessary for us to see the truth, and this is how I've done the work that I've done. And so right now, I feel calm. Everything's good. It wasn't as intense for me because I expected to see what I saw, because I already knew, I know so much about the crime. Whenever I don't know about the crime and I go into this, because I've put this off until this point, I wanted to do this live on the show because somebody came into our home, my son and I's, right before Christmas or one of the days after, and they put a book in my mailbox that has personalized signatures that are personalized anchors, psychological anchors that only I would know about, giving away personal information of mine. So that was that very much stood out. The book itself has writing on it very similar to Rader's, along with text that reminds me a lot of his communications, especially with magazines, where you would have print and then you would have the cursive. It has the mirror, which is symbolic, especially for quite a few things that I was personally, personal conversations that I was having. We knew immediately that somebody had committed a crime to leave that book with no note, nothing on it. I posted on Nextdoor to try to figure it out, and then I decided, per usual, that I would handle it how I handle it within my own team and my own operation. And it really just, it scared my son. He was the one to go get the mail. And then I have a card, from some of my partners, and then I have that in there. And I'm asking my friend, like, hey, thanks for the book. Like, did you send it? And she's like, no. So then we have, yeah, this is what's going on. And then somebody came in, we just found out last night, came in and stole all of my son's underwear, but like 4 pairs, which we had with us when we were on the trip. Because we went out, my car has been on the fritz. So we've been at home. It's winter and I live up in an area where that's just where you live, right? You live off the land out there, and like that's what a lot of people do. And I did not leave for about maybe but 3 times the last month. And so knowing that articles of my clothing of my son's were taken is the same exact tactics that are deployed by Dennis Rader when he was doing this stuff. And so, of course, it's all been reported, but I'm telling my audience right now, this has to do with this network of people, because it spans not only these cases I've discussed with you and the ones involving Rader directly through the puzzle, but now I'm finding that these children I've investigated on behalf of other states such as Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, New York, California, and Texas specifically, Arizona, all of these areas have been tied directly to the puzzle, to victims, to key parties that they claim are their bosses, and other key details that are very much clear as day and are actually found to be tied to all of these cases. These guys' names come up. Now, I'm not here to speculate. That's the Fed's jobs. We let them do their job. But at the end of the day, these guys are connected to huge political parties and affiliations and people that, I'm just not even going to talk about. But at the end of the day, one day these stories will come out. And we know what you've done to these children. And there's many people that are willing to rat on your asses. We're talking about law enforcement officials, ex-military guys, all of these people that are affiliated, and it is literally like going up the chain. We're talking about political affiliations and things that I'm just not going to touch on. So if any of these guys are still alive and they know about this, it would make sense as to why this has become a very complicated investigation. It also teaches our audience that you have to be very careful when you look at these cases, because even when I started this, and I know this from years of, decades of experience at this point, I'll look at a case and then before I know it, it's involving a whole bunch of really bad people, not just one offender, which is so important that we talk about this, y'all. After walking through the commission of the Fager family murders with you, you'll begin to understand how I start with tracing patterns forward instead of backward, geography, timing, behavior, silence. What emerges when cases that were never meant to speak to one another are finally placed side by side. That path led me to Fort Smith, Arkansas. Fort Smith is not just a location on a map in this investigation. It is a pivot point. It is where something surfaced that I did not expect, and where the first victim I personally identified in this process in Fort Smith came into focus. Her name is Melissa Witt. What began as a single thread in Fort Smith opened into a wider corridor, one that led directly to the river valley, and to a man whose name continues to surface across multiple cases, jurisdictions, and timelines, Charles Ray Vines, often referred to as the River Valley Killer. I want to be very clear about something before we go further. This is not about speculation. This is not about accusation for the sake of narrative. This is about documented behavior, emerging connections, and the responsibility to follow where the evidence and the patterns lead. Melissa Witt deserves to be spoken about with care. She deserves context. She deserves truth, not noise. So before we go any further into Fort Smith, into the River Valley, and into what led me to Charles Ray Vines, I want to pause and allow someone I trust to introduce Melissa properly. Aaron Hawkins.
December 1st, 1994, Fort Smith, Arkansas. Melissa Ann Witt was only 19. Her whole life still unfolding. Dreams just beginning to take shape. On this chilly December evening, she walked across the familiar parking lot of Bowling World, a place filled with laughter and memories from nights past. She was going to meet her mother for a simple dinner, a ritual of comfort and connection. She wore her favorite watch, a Mickey Mouse watch. The air was heavy with the promise of forgiveness after a small mother-daughter quarrel. Just an ordinary night, or so it seemed. But in the fragile space between her car door swinging open and her foot touching the cold pavement, Melissa crossed an invisible line. A line drawn by someone lurking in the shadows. Someone whose intentions were as dark as the winter night. Someone who changed everything. This is a case that has haunted the community for more than 3 decades. A case with evidence left in plain sight. Questions that never stopped multiplying. And a trail that leads from a brightly lit parking lot to the dark, isolated woods of the Ozark National Forest. Today, we revisit the abduction and murder of Melissa Witt. Not just to retell a story, but to press into the details that still matter. Melissa Witt's story is not just a case file or a cautionary tale. It is a legacy of love, hope, and an aching absence that ripples through every life she touched. Her laughter, her dreams, and her fierce determination to live are not lost. They echo in the hearts of her late mother, Marianne, her friends, and a community that refuses to let her memory fade. There's an empty chair at every holiday table, a silence where her voice should be, a future that will always remain unfinished. For those who loved her, the loss is not measured in days or years, but in all the moments she should have been a part of. We owe it to Melissa, and to every family still waiting for answers, to keep asking, keep searching, to keep believing that justice is possible. Because the true measure of a community is not found in how quickly it moves on, but in how fiercely it holds on to the names and stories of those who are gone. As long as we remember Melissa, as long as we speak her name with compassion and conviction, she is not forgotten. In the darkness of unanswered questions, we become the light that keeps her story alive.
As we close out this episode, I want to take a moment to say how grateful I am to officially welcome Aaron Hawkins to this work. We're honored to have him as a regular voice on the show. Aaron brings not only decades of law enforcement experience, but a steady, principled lens, one rooted in victim advocacy, accountability, and truth. He really drops in on these evildoers and shows them that we're not going to stand down. Just because you think you've gotten away with it doesn't mean that that is the end of the road. Together, Aaron and I will continue to look deeper, not just at individual cases, but at the people, the patterns, and the systems surrounding them. And as we move forward, you'll hear Aaron share his professional perspective on what may be happening within the Cipher, what stands out, what concerns him, and what deserves closer scrutiny. This collaboration matters. To Melissa Witt, it is an honor to do this work in your name. From one Melissa Ann to another, I want you to know this. I'm with you. Your story matters. Your life mattered. And your voice is not lost here. What began in Fort Smith, Arkansas is not ending here. This episode marks only the beginning of a long-form investigative journey into Fort Smith and the surrounding River Valley, a region now tied to more than 20 victims who have surfaced through this decoding process. These connections did not emerge by accident. They emerged because someone finally stopped looking at these cases in isolation. This is not about spectacle or about shortcuts. This is about sustained investigation, careful analysis, and staying with the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Thank you for trusting me with this work. Thank you for walking this path with us. This is only beginning. Prayers up, y'all. God bless.